Hey guys, Ken Smith Fishing. I'm going to ask you to watch a video today. I've got Rayburn reports coming, but I'm compelled to share something with you because of some things that happened this weekend that just really got me thinking about what's going on at Rayburn and all over the country right now. And that is the potential for hypothermia. And so if you haven't seen what happened this weekend, Ty and Jason Moorhead hit a stump. And my understanding is they hit a stump that normally you could see, but it was rough. And any of us who know Rayburn, when it gets rough, you're getting bounced around, you get rain in your face, you get whatever. And I tore the bottom out of my boat in Rayburn by hitting a stump that was out of the water. But it was in a trough. It normally would have been easy to see, but it was 3 footers. It was in a trough. When I popped down out of that trough, there it was, and I hit it probably 10 or 12 years ago and tore the bottom out of one of my skeeters. Now, these are the pictures of their boat. And fortunately, they're both fine. You see those chop marks in the middle of between the seats there? That's the prop. So the lower unit, the motor came up on the back deck and went through between them. And luckily, neither one of them got hurt. Those of you who know or knew Stan Burgay, same thing happened to Stan and his grandson. And luckily, these guys didn't end up in the water. But they easily could have. A couple of buddies of ours wound up in the water at a bass champs tournament a couple of years ago. They hooked a bass cat running around Calhoun Point, threw them both out. Luckily, they both kept their consciousness. Luckily, they both had their life jackets on, had their kill switches on, and were able to. And people saw them, and they were able to get back in the boat. But it's only been a few years ago that we lost Nick Kaler at Okeechobee. And if you don't know that story, their boat didn't sink. It was really, really rough water in Okeechobee that day. He was the co-angler. He got tossed from the boat. The boater, I never heard the actual story. I don't know if it ever came out. There was a lawsuit, but he wound up in the water. The boater could not get back to him. They got separated and he couldn't find him, and the boater couldn't. And the boater almost died as well. The boater basically clung to the trolling motor. He wound up in the water that day too. But I wrote an article back years ago. So in 2003, some of you may remember, we had two local young men die of hypothermia on Toledo Bend. And we were over there practicing that day. It was a very, very strange day in that it was windy and it was foggy. And you don't get those conditions very often. One of them called his dad and said that we're taking on water. This is quite a while ago. I don't know if they maybe didn't have GPS or they didn't have electronics or they were just panicked and they didn't know exactly where they were in the fog. They both went in the water, and we actually didn't fish the next day. We went out and helped look for them, hoping we would find them, and unfortunately it was days later before they found them. And so I wrote an article about hypothermia. And so I want to share with you some of that information and maybe something that'll save your life. And by the way, after I wrote this article, maybe a year and a half later, I got a call. I wrote it for Inside Line, and I got a call from them, which is Gary Yamamoto's online magazine. And the editor said, somebody would like to talk to you. Can we connect you? And I said, sure. And a fella had gone in the water at Okeechobee and had read my article, and he survived, and he's credited having read this article with him surviving. Unfortunately, his partner didn't survive. Rayburn's super low. I see guys running around the amber forest. I see guys running through the canyons. I see guys running through the forest. And even if you don't hit something, things happen. I actually had heard, and you may think your boat won't sink. I heard that possibly one of those guys at Rayburn's boat sank was their boat started taking on water. And it actually caused me, I left my boat back then outside during the winter, and it caused me to start thinking about what might go wrong where I couldn't get the water back out of my boat. And we all run Perco or something similar for our bilge pumps in very similar fittings. They all have rubber hoses and they all have plastic elbows in those rubber hoses. And if water sits in those plastic elbows and freezes, it will expand, and just extreme temperatures in those things. My boat at the time was 4 years old, and I went in and grabbed one of those fittings and did that, and it came apart in my hands. Well, if that happens to be one of the fittings to your bilge pump, you're not only going to be taking water in, you're going to have no way to get water out. So a lot of things could happen. None of us go out thinking, hey, it's 52-degree water temperature, I'm going to get in the water today, but it happens. And there are some things you need to understand about what you can do to help you have a chance to survive something awful like that happening. The first thing is you got to have your kill switch attached. The best way to survive this is to get back to your boat and get part or all of your body out of the water. And if your kill switch is still attached and it starts doing that circle, or excuse me, is not attached, or if you don't have a life jacket on, your chances of survival go down dramatically, and I'll show you some of those statistics in a minute. If you happen to wind up in the water, when I was 19 years old, I wound up in the water at Millwood in southern Arkansas. And some guys could see me in the water. Actually, what happened was I was fishing along with the big 12-volt trolling motor, and the wind was blowing, and I reached to grab a tree, and the tree broke off. And I was leaning on that tree, and I went in the water in full mud boots. You guys see me all the time. I don't zip my boots up when I'm by myself out in the winter, because I want to be able to get those things off, because I've been in the water with boots on. That's why I don't zip my boots up. It's also why now you see me when I'm fishing when the water's cold, almost all the time, if I'm by myself, I have an Onyx inflatable life jacket on. Because if I go in the water, you don't have long in cold water temperature before you start losing your dexterity, start losing your ability to reason, and start losing your ability to swim. So I wear my boots unzipped and I wear an inflatable. But let me share some statistics with you. Because again, all of us could end up in the water. I've been in it once. I hope it doesn't happen again. But I know a little bit that might help me survive it if I do go in the water again. So the first thing I'm going to suggest to you, by the way, is go through your fittings in your boat. If your boat's more than a couple of years old, get down in the bilge, grab them, wiggle them, make sure your hoses are connected well, that all your hose clamps are still tight, and that those plastic fittings haven't started to rot, because they will absolutely rot. I'll bet you in the in the summertime, in my boat barn, in my hull, it probably gets 120, 130 degrees in there. That's something that will degrade plastic. You're going to have problems with those, especially if then later I leave water in there and they freeze and it expands, and I start getting things that are going to break when I get in a bad situation. So just a couple of statistics for you guys. So your body loses heat 30 times faster in water than it does in air. If you wind up in the water, you have basically a very short period of time, as you can see by this chart. If you don't have a PFD, a personal flotation device on, and you're only in 50-degree water, which is roughly where we are at Rayburn right now. It's mid to high 50s, but on any given day, we get a couple of really cool nights, it could be 50 degrees. Your survival time, if you are doing drown-proof floating, if you don't know what drown-proof floating is, you simply get in the water, you spread your arms, you put your face down, you fill your lungs, you float, and you lift your head and get a breath, and you put your face back down. That's called drown-proof floating. If you're doing that in 50-degree water, you got about an hour and a half before you're dead. If you're treading water, you have maybe 2 hours before you're dead. With a PFD on, with a personal flotation device on, if you try to swim, it's only about 2 hours. If you stay still, you got about 2.7 hours. If you're in the help position, which is the position at the bottom of this page, that is with your legs pulled up, your arms crossed, and ideally if you can get your strap of your life jacket around while you still have dexterity to keep your legs up so you can stay in that position, what you're trying to do is lower as much of your body's contact with the water. You want to preserve your core temperature, so you want to have your body wrapped up around your chest, around your core, so that you have as little of your body as possible exposed to the water. You want to leave your clothes on. You want to leave anything you can get around your neck or head on, because you lose heat fast through those. Even if it's wet, you want to leave it on. You want to maintain all the body heat you can possibly maintain. If you're in the help position in 50-degree water, you got about 4 hours that you can survive that. Not 4 hours that you can coherent, or 4 hours that you can probably even reason well, but 4 hours that you're going to stay alive. The other ideal thing, if you can, is huddle with others. Body to body, as close as you can. Again, trying to preserve that body heat by having contact with somebody else versus contact with the water. As the water gets colder, you have much, much less time. By the way, sorry, I should have said, again, if at all possible, get yourself out of the water. If you can, around the trolling motor shaft, or ideally, if you can get to the back of the boat, again, you gotta have that motor turned off, right? Kill switch has gotta be pulled. Get to the back of the boat, get your legs around the motor, reach up, hit the trim switch. You can literally trim yourself out of the water, roll onto the back deck, and you've survived that, what could have been an awful thing happen to you. So getting to that motor is going to help you a lot if you can get around there to it. Okay, sorry, I'm reading as I'm doing this too, just to want to make sure I remember exactly what all I wanted to tell you guys. So swimming decreases or increases the rate of body heat by 35 to 50%. If you've never looked into this, there's actually some other really interesting, a lot of them by, I can't remember if it's the Coast Guard, and there's also some really good videos out of Canada about this, about going into cold water, where they have guys who are brave enough to go in cold water in a pool and show some of these things. But basically they say experiments have shown that swimmers have been able to swim as far, expert swimmers, as 8/10 of a mile in 50-degree water before succumbing to hypothermia. But others, expert swimmers, have been able to swim less than 100 yards. So literally, unless you are, I would think, less than 200 or 300 yards from shore, get back to the boat, get on a stump, get yourself up out of the water if at all possible. Don't try to make a quarter of a mile swim to the shore. By the way, that just made me think of two other guys. 3 or 4 years ago, left out of Mill Creek in a Champion. Same thing, a fitting broke, they took on water. They both went in the water. They actually wound up, I think, washing back because there was a wind that blew them back to Powell Park, and they both thought they were going to die that day. Luckily, they didn't. So this happens way more regularly probably than even what gets reported. So what the experts say again is in 50-degree water temperature, although your survival time may be, as much as a couple of hours, your ability to reason, your ability to grab a hold of things, your ability to swim is probably half of that time or less. Now, so that is 50-degree water. If you look at this chart, the colder the water dramatically decreases the amount of time you have to get yourself out of the water or get yourself saved. By the way, one of the other things we should probably all have, and I had it on my last one, and I'm going to put another one on this one, is a whistle on your life jacket. The fellow that went in the water in Okeechobee, he said they were less than 300 yards from a boat lane. He said it was really windy, and he said they had guys go by them that they could see, but they couldn't be seen. He said, had I had a whistle on my life jacket, I probably could have got somebody's attention, and they could have come got us out of the water, and both of us could have survived it. By the way, that's not Nick Taylor. This was two other guys, actually several years before Nick passed away at Okeechobee. So in 40 to 50-degree water temperature, you have 30 to 60 minutes before you have exhaustion or unconsciousness, and you have 1 to 3 hours before you'll succumb, before it'll kill you. In 32 to 40-degree temperature, which a lot of my buddies fishing, I heard the other day, the water at Grand right now is in the low 40s. You got maybe 15 at the top end, 30 minutes that you can still function before you're unconscious or completely exhausted, not able to do anything. So again, if you get in the water and you got a way to get your legs up and wrap yourself up in that help position, do it as fast as possible. And then in that cold of water, you got 30 to 90 minutes before it's going to kill you. And then in 32-degree-ish water, you got almost no time. You got less than 15 minutes, and you're going to survive before you're going to be exhausted or unconscious. And you got 15 to 45 minutes before it's going to kill you. So you can buy the little GPS units that go on your life jacket. I would suggest if you do fish water, that's probably not a bad idea. I will tell you, I still to this day, when I leave on days like this weekend, just with cold weather, with some wind, I tell my buddies where I am. I tell somebody, usually it's Dickie or it's Clayton, I tell them I'm going out of Caney, I'm going to fish these areas, and I plan to be off the water at this time. And we normally talk during the day. If I don't hear back from one of them, I want to know where to go look for them. So use the buddy system. let somebody know where you are, let somebody know when you're going to be in, and check in with them so we don't have a problem of somebody going and missing and nobody knowing about it. Other things that you should have in your boat, again, in case you get out, even if you get to the shore, I mean, a lot of Rayburn's national forest. We would suggest you have a Tupperware container with some extra clothes in it. I always have a spare survival suit. So I run Gill rain suit, but my old Bass Pro Shop 100-mile-per-hour suit is in my boat all the time. And I have loaned it to somebody who went in the water, by the way. A flashlight's a good idea. Signal mirror is a great idea. Signal flares are even a better idea, or even just a flare that's used on the side of the road. You can see those things for miles and miles. Waterproof matches, hand warmers, a towel, all good ideas. Obviously extra cold weather clothes. And I have one of those little tiny metal reflective blankets that you see them give people after they run a marathon. They're like $4 at Dick's or Academy or Walmart or Target. Great idea to have one of those. It's about the size of a deck of cards. So that's my thoughts, guys. I just want you to be prepared. I want you to know what that help position is. I want you to wear your life jackets. I want you to wear your kill switches. If you don't know it, it is a law in Texas now. If your combustion engine is running, you have to have your kill switch hooked up. Also, there was a big discussion on some of my videos a couple of years ago. If you are running a inflatable PFD, as I recall the discussion, there's only one version of those that you can have and not have, well, let me rephrase it. If you have one of those and you are not wearing it, you have to have a non-inflatable version in the boat or you'll get a ticket. I think there's only one of those, a class 3 or class 4. I'm sorry, somebody can comment below for me which it is, that you're legal only having that in the boat. But otherwise, if you don't have it on and a game warden pulls up on you, you better have another zip up or buckle up life jacket, not a throw cushion in the boat, or they will write you a ticket. So I know that's probably a pretty dreary subject, but I just want you guys to know those things. I want you to know what you got to do if you do wind up in the water, because it's probably going to happen to somebody again in the next few months, somewhere across the country that might see this video. And if you do, I hope you have the presence of mind to have the stuff with you to get yourself out of the water, to have somebody know where you are, or if you, in very worst case scenario, to go to that help position and hope somebody comes and finds you and gets you out of the water. So cheerier subjects coming later this week. I'm going to get my tournament footage up, but I really want to get this posted because you guys, so many of you guys have become my friends. All of you guys I would consider a friend, but I've made so many good friends doing these videos. And we all have people we love, we want to go home to, and who want us to come home to them. I'm a life insurance guy by trade, but I don't ever want to pay a claim on anybody I know or anybody, period, as far as that goes. So wear your life jacket, wear your kill switch, be careful. Know where you're running. Just because somebody else run through there doesn't mean it's safe. And know what to do if you get in the water, to either get yourself out of the water or to help you have a better survival rate if you wind up in the water. So thanks, guys, and we'll see y'all later.